10th is World Mental Health Day. The objective is to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilize efforts to support. And the reality is that there's a lot of stigma around mental health, and that stigma can lead to discrimination. However, we're here to kickstart new points, challenge, and share stories. Ancient Greeks used to say nous and somai, which translates to a healthy mind in a healthy body. So we're going to be sharing today stories of resilience, stories of fighters. And I would like to welcome στη παρέα μας ένα όμορφο κορίτσι, Mary Tompros, who has an Instagram page to talk about this. She lives with hallucinations. She has lived with it for more than 8 years. And she's here to talk about her experience. Mary μου, καλώς ήρθες. Welcome to the Doralicious Show.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Harika. Whew, this is so exciting.
You're so happy.
So happy. And thank you for doing that, Mary. Thank you for being so brave and come in our show and talk about that. Thank you very much.
Honestly, thank you guys so much. I'll be honest with you, because I've been in the mental health system since I was 14 and now I'm 28. There's been a lot, and there's a lot to say, and there's a lot that's left to get done. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm one of the few that actually made it out to be able to share my story and let people know, you know what, it's okay to not be okay. And the stigma and stereotype that we have towards, let's say, mental illness and the capabilities towards individuals shouldn't necessarily be stigmatized.
Absolutely. And I think you touch on very important points, the stigma and how you're very high functioning. I think a lot of people forget that just because you have any type of mental illness, it doesn't mean that you're not part of society.
110%. People are like, wait, but you work with children. Like, yeah, you didn't, like, you drive a car. Yeah, it's okay. I'm like, but doesn't it kind of, I'm like, honestly, like, I understand Hollywood has picked it out to be this certain way, but it's not actually what you think it is per se. Like, example, you know how sometimes...
Give us an example and tell us how it is. How's your everyday life? Like, how it is for you?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, go on.
No. Essentially, what does it mean to live with hallucinations? I think that's the epitome of the conversation.
I feel like for everybody, it's different. Mm-hmm. So that's also another thing, is people have this assumption that it's all the same. No, not everything's all the same. Everything's different and catered to, I guess, the individuals, the best way I would point it out. So the way for me, it's kind of I'm never really alone, which is, I guess, kind of cool in a sense, depending on how you look at it.
I love your humor. I love your humor.
Honestly, I'll be upfront with you. If we had this conversation 7 years ago, I don't think I'd be this joyful. I'm at the point now where you have two options. You laugh or you cry about it, and not laughing as, say, like laughing at myself, but owning it. You know what? I did what I did, and it made me the person that I am today. And so what if it doesn't fit society's norms? I'm okay with that. This is my normal.
Let's break the norm. There's no such thing as norm. We create the norm.
Exactly. I'm so sorry about getting off track, but then going back. So when it comes to my daily life, it's interesting. Not every day is the same, obviously. And I feel like this is for quote unquote normal people. If you don't eat, sleep, exercise, and I'm not talking weightlift, go for a half an hour walk, be one with nature, smell the flowers, just do eat. When you don't eat, sleep, or exercise, anybody gets thrown off track, right?
Yeah.
So right. Now for me, it just becomes a little bit different. When I don't eat, sleep, or exercise, sometimes my hallucination and I won't necessarily share space, which is okay. We use tools and techniques. And the other thing is, like, the best way I like to compare it is, you know how when you sometimes have like negative thoughts about yourself, and you think like, maybe I'm not meant to be, or maybe I'm not worth it.
Yep.
And you have those thoughts in your heads. I don't know if you ladies have ever experienced that.
Absolutely. I think everyone has.
Yes. I think everybody speaks negatively about themselves. Now, picture that in just a full form figure. So instead of your mind, so instead of you looking in the mirror and saying I'm worthless, I have an individual telling me that I'm worthless.
So how often do you hear voices?
So actually mine is with me from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. When we first encountered each other 8 years ago, we didn't really make space for each other. So sleeping wasn't a situation. It just was very complicated. And to be fair though, I mean, in reality, what relationship, parent, friendship, business, anything isn't hectic and complicated?
I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it. It's like having a BFF with you all the time that you fight or you learn to live with each other.
Yes, and it's not really like I'd say more of like, you know how we have like those inner conscience thoughts where like we have these inner thoughts and we have like these intrusive thoughts and these commanding thoughts about how we're, let's say, not the best and how life would be better off without us. And we have all these negative thoughts about how we're not a good person.
Yeah.
Instead of me thinking those thoughts, I just have the individual. So we all kind of live pretty much the same, if that makes sense. Like we all like
the same page.
Sorry?
You're on the same page, both of you, somehow.
Yes. And to be fair, like we all speak negatively about ourselves. So that's just kind of what, yeah.
No, I understand. We're going to go on a quick break. When we come back, I want you to talk about your life. I want to understand. I understand at the age of 14, you were diagnosed with severe depressions and things progressed. So when we come back, I want you to tell us a little bit about young Mary and what that meant. We'll be back. Stay tuned here on the Doralicious Show. Today it's about mental health. And Mary Tompros is open and sweet enough to share what she has experienced. Stay tuned. We'll be back. And we're back with Mary talking about mental health. Mary, what did it mean at the age of 14 to be diagnosed with severe depression?
Well, I mean, it did make a lot of sense. I did, and I don't mean to put a damper on the mood, I did try and end my life due to childhood trauma. So it does when they had diagnosed me with severe depression, it had totally made sense. I had let my hygiene go. I had let everything go. I dropped a lot of teams that I was on. I stopped socializing with friends. There was a lot of factors and a lot of things that proved that, yes, I was severely depressed. And unfortunately, due to a lot of, I guess, stigma, and I don't want to say uneducated, but it was a time, this was 2008, 2009, when mental illness wasn't really spoken about. It was seen as a taboo, very
behind closed doors.
Yes. So that became a little challenging for me because I was 14 years old and I was going through this depression that I couldn't speak about. So I was in therapy and that still wasn't working. So one day I just, I guess, not really pulled the trigger, but tried to pull the trigger on my life. And then I ended up at Sunnybrook Hospital. And then the journey just kind of went in from that, from the age of 14 to 23, in and out of hospital and rehab more times to count. I probably I definitely spent more time in my hospital bed than I ever did in my own bed.
Can I ask you, you don't have to answer this. What led you to wanting to commit suicide?
Unfortunately, and this is where I'm going to like dab on a little bit because for me, it's a very personal thing. There was a lot of inner trauma that had happened that unfortunately due to that, it had made me feel worthless and had made me question whether my loved ones did love me or not. And I figured off that they would be better off without me. And it took me 8, 9 times to figure out, actually, you know what? Your life isn't better without you. You need to stop thinking
that way. Yeah. What do you feel were the biggest challenges dealing with a family? And I'm going to highlight being of Greek background has an extra layer of hesitancy.
You see, I'm nodding right away. Yes. So you have to remember this is 2008. So I don't blame anybody. This is back when society didn't know anything about mental illness. So it's not like we had Bell Let's Talk Day in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Mental health wasn't spoken about. It was viewed as a taboo. So it was very difficult. And there was this one encounter where I know my father was protecting me. I didn't view it as this way. We were at a Greek dance performance. I used to dance for Greek dance. Unfortunately, because I was hospitalized that time, I missed practices. I didn't perform. I got a weekend pass. So in the psychiatric ward, which a lot of people don't know this, is they give you weekend passes and day passes. It's to get you to get back out into the world, acclimated with your friends, family, school, all that fun jazz. I got a weekend pass. So excited. I bought a new dress from Dynamite. I remember the dress perfectly. It had flowers. It was brown. It had a yellow sash. I don't know if you guys remember the big thick sash. Flower. You know
high school days. High school days.
Yes, the baby doll dresses and the ruffle up at the chest.
Oh, baby. We rock those. We rock those.
You know. So I was so excited, fixed my hair. My hospital band was on because I had to keep it on because I was going to go back the next day. Fine. We were in the car as we get to, I believe it was St. Nick's Church. As we get to St. Nick's Church, we're in the car. My dad turns to me and goes, "You can't tell people where you were. They think you were running tests."
Okay.
And at that point, I was like, what? And then I had realized that in my community, it wasn't spoken about. It was viewed as a taboo. So that whole event, I just said, yeah, they're just running tests on me. Oh, I don't know what it is. And for that moment in time, I felt like I was this outcast because I wasn't allowed to tell my friends where I was, because I know that I don't know if I would have been ridiculed, but I probably would have been slightly gossiped about.
Yeah. Mary, how long it took you and your family to speak about that, to talk about that? Because now I know you have an Instagram, you talk about that, you share stories, you share your everyday life with your followers. How long it took you to, say that, guys, I'm experiencing that, or you and your family to talk about it?
With everybody, it was very different. Everybody had an idea, but it was never really confirmed. Mm-hmm. And then I just slowly started telling people, and people had an idea, because by that point I'd spent my grade 11 and 12 year in the hospital, that it was very hard to, not everybody knew, only my close friends knew. Everybody thought I was in Texas visiting my papu. So there was a lot of that, but
hush.
Yes. And again, I do not blame anybody at all. There was not enough talk about it. So that's why I don't blame anybody in the community. I don't blame my parents, none of that, because we did what we thought was right at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that comes to lack of education. They didn't know how to handle things like that. We didn't know. In 2009 and 8 and 10, we are just starting.
We're still learning. We're still learning.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's why for me, I'm not angry, because I've been in this from 14 to 28 now. We've come a long way. Mm-hmm. There's still ways to go.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we know from my Instagram, I advocate on wellness checks going completely wrong.
Yep.
So, there is still a lot of work to be done. Funding still have to be generated. There should be no reason there should be a 2-year wait list, or you have to pay $500 a week for therapy because you have a psychosis disorder or
You touch on very important issues, and I want to get back to that, but I want us to take a quick break, go hear a song, and we'll be back just to highlight that. How is our system supporting people who live with different mental health illnesses? And what has your experience been? So we'll be back. Stay tuned. Doralicious Show, special on mental health. And we talked a little bit about the difficulties in our system. What has your experience been with the system and mental health?
Okay, well, this is a very tricky topic, because there has been growth. Don't get me wrong. There are more programs. We are definitely generating more funds and more awareness. There is still a wait list. I know personally, I've been on wait list to the point where the wait list was too long. I ended up causing actually more harm to myself than ever. So my parents had to do a lot of privatized therapy. Actually, the majority of my therapy, due to how long the wait list was and how severe everything with me had gotten, privatized therapy was the only option. I could not wait 2 years. Unfortunately, and I hope I don't get emotional when I say this, a good friend of mine, he's passed away now. We both applied for the same treatment program. Mine took too long. My parents paid the money for me to do the special program. This friend of mine, I don't know the exact date. Let's say he passed away on the Monday. The Wednesday, the hospital called to let him know that he was ready to have his intake for the program. That's very common, actually, for a lot of people, unfortunately, because the funding does take too long. The wait list for these programs do take too long, and you do have to spend a lot of money. And I'll be honest with you, therapy isn't cheap at all.
And you do highlight an important issue, that the system fails us. It fails the vulnerable. We judge society based on the way it can handle the weakest point, the way it takes care of the weakest members. And this is an example of how it has failed a lot of members. And money should not be an obstacle to deal with mental health the way you deal with a broken leg.
The government assumes, I don't mean to say the government put them out like that, but I'm just saying they assume that mental health is a privilege. Like, to get your mental health taken care of, it's a privilege. No, it should be a right. I shouldn't have to pay hundreds of dollars a week because I have a psychosis disorder, or I have a borderline personality disorder, or I have depression, or I have anxiety, or I have OCD, or there's so many under the sun.
Absolutely. So why did you start your Instagram page?
So initially I started the page because throughout the pandemic, obviously we know there were a lot of wellness checks in Ontario that unfortunately 6 of them ended horrifically wrong. Actually, they all ended in the individual dying. Yes. And I know 6 people are going to say, oh, 6 is not a lot. No, 6 is actually quite a lot in one whole year. The wellness check is to preserve a life, not to end a life. And individuals were not passing away, actually, they got shot. They got shot during a wellness check. And a lot of these individuals had similar mental illnesses to me. And I don't know if you saw one of my posts where I showed the group chat between me and my family, where we had all agreed that we will not call the police anymore for wellness checks. We will figure this out on our own. When you go to hospital, they tell your loved ones that if you can't get them there safely, call the police. They also say that if your loved one isn't feeling well, you need to check in on them, call the police. That's what a wellness check is for. You also know that you're approaching the wellness check with the individual carrying a weapon, aka a butter knife. So to shoot an individual that is calling you, or their loved ones are calling you saying they're going to hurt themselves, where the confusion of their lives come into play, for me, is extremely mind-boggling. And there was this one gentleman, Chadori, I'm going to say his name wrong. I actually met his children. They're wonderful, wonderful individuals. This poor man was shot 6 times on his balcony. They were on the balcony. He was inside. He was inside his condo. And they shot him 6 times on the balcony. And then they went inside the room and shot him again. It's all over the news.
I remember the story. And I think it goes back to what we've heard, that it's usually the ignorance of society, including the police, that has become such a threat to everyone.
There's been cases where it's individuals that live on their own. I live on my own. I've told my parents, listen, you guys live in Markham. I'm in Toronto. You got half an hour, 45 minutes. Get here. Figure out how to get here, because I know, and I don't want to say this, I'm worried that me or a loved one that I know will be next. So because of all this, that sparked a lot of it. So I started speaking out, because people have known me in the community forever. I Greek dance, I go to church. I was a mirofora for like 6-7 years. I was like actively involved in the community, and I also swim teach as well, which is very big because I work with kids. A lot of people don't, there's a lot of sometimes stigma attached, danger, all that stuff. So when I had built somewhat of a, I want to say, a successful life, I said, you know what? It's time to drop the bomb on people. I have a hallucination. And
Right.
then it kind of grew to this community where everybody's learned that we're all in this together, and I will not let anybody fall behind. And there's no way I'm letting mental illness take anybody again. Like, it's taken too many of my friends. It's taken too many people to drain wellness checks. I'm not allowing this anymore. I'm going to fight till I'm blue in the face, because nobody is going to die anymore due to mental illness, or sorry, due to anything, but you know what I mean, mental illness.
You're so brave.
You're a fighter.
You
And
are.
I'm gonna start crying when I say this. I'm one of the lucky ones that got out of it alive. I even had a drug problem, which I'm sure you saw in one of my posts. It was, I used it as a self-coping mechanism. Again, there was a lot of stigma attached, because remember, when we do drugs, it's not the first option, it's the last resort. It's to mask pain. It's to be able to mask pain and come back into society and look like we're quote unquote normal. The problem is there's so much negative vibes attached. You're troubled, you're this, you're that. No, we're just trying to find our way in this world. And unfortunately, there's a lot of barricades that I'm trying to kind of say, back it up, back it up. You're not going to barricade us no more.
Mary, thank you for your bravery. Thank you for
sharing all this with us and with our listeners, because it's important to have stories like that to be heard, and we're glad we have you here today.
And as I told you earlier, if it makes people uncomfortable, you're doing the right thing. Ευχαριστούμε τόσο πολύ για την παρέα σου, and thank you for opening your heart to us.
Are you kidding me? Honestly, thank you guys, because if there's one thing that I can do in the world is, I never want that parent to feel like society is going to judge them for their child, and I never want that child to feel like society doesn't love them. That's super important, is the whole unit as a whole needs to know that we've got you. Mom, dad, you did a great job raising your child. If your child has a mental illness, you know what? Yes, it's going to be difficult, but there's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about anymore. We're at the point now where nobody needs to live in shame or fear. This is who we are. And yeah, the world has to make space for all of us.
Be out there, conquer the world, smile, and you got this. You got this. This was Mary Tompros sharing her story, living with hallucinations. Follow her on Instagram. And if you have any questions, just reach out. Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, guys.
Φιλάκια πολλά.
Φιλάκια.